Colleen, we're just arriving over scene, and we understand that the vehicle is actually in the wash. You can see that the LAPD is trying to chase this vehicle, and we just came overhead. We have eyes on the cars. Cars that are chasing him, rather. We're still trying to get an eye on the suspect's vehicle. Now, this is a pursuit that started just a few minutes ago in the LAPD's Topanga division. At this point, it is unclear what that person is wanted for. But again, LAPD behind the car as well as overhead. And I believe that these units are trailing a little bit behind, and the car may have actually already come out of the wash and be back on surface streets. I'm hearing that it may be over at Sylvia and Victory, which is not far from here. So we're going to try to maneuver around so that we can get eyes on that vehicle. I see Victory right here, so I believe that he may have come out of the wash and is now on surface streets here in the area. The airship trying to get eyes on that vehicle once again. It was actually only a few minutes ago. It was on surface streets as we were coming overhead. And then as we got to the scene, we saw those units actually in the wash trying to locate that vehicle. So it looks like that is the point at which the cars lost him. And now the airship, I believe he has eyes on him and is trying to get them back behind the vehicle. Yeah, exactly. It looked like it was a movie shoot as we were arriving overhead. And I'm actually going to follow the units here because the airship can see the car, and he's trying to direct the ground units to get behind him. Again, it's unclear what initiated this pursuit, but we were actually heading to another story when we heard it, and heard that it was in the west end of the San Fernando Valley, the LAPD's Topanga division, in pursuit. And now we see these units, they're on Victory, so they're trying to get closer to the vehicle, that is, but the airship is still overhead, and they're actually telling the units that they're passing the car right now. So we're going to stick with the ground units, since that's going to be our best chance of finding the driver's car. And now we're actually hearing that he's approaching the 101 freeway. So we're going to make our way over there, and as soon as we get eyes on the vehicle, we'll bring you those images. Go ahead, Chantal. No, I think it's real. I mean, it seems real. They're behind this guy now. Maybe this is him. Okay, will do. Let's see. Okay, they're saying they're behind the vehicle now. So this is him, yeah. Yeah, they're saying this is it. Okay. Cool. We're in Woodland Hills now. We're going south 101. Let me drop the streets. Say that again, Tim. Okay, 20 seconds. 101 at Canoga. Copy. Yeah, he's exiting the 101 there, Topanga Canyon, I believe. He was headed southbound. This was the vehicle that the LAPD was trying to locate in the wash. So that's where they had lost eyes on him, but the airship still had him, and he was able to navigate those ground units back to this vehicle. It's a dark-colored vehicle, an older model from what I can tell. It seems to have some additional blue paint there on the driver's side. And again, at this point, it is unclear what this person is wanted for, but he was driving very fast there on the southbound 101 freeway. As far as I can tell, it is a man behind the wheel, but whether anyone else is on board, it's difficult to tell. He's actually reaching over right now, over to the passenger side. He seems to have a problem with his passenger side mirror. I think he broke it, actually, so he was trying to fix it the best he could to be able to use that mirror, but it looks like he's going to be down to just the driver's side mirror because that thing is hanging. And this, again, is the LAPD that is in pursuit, but they did notify the CHP. When he got on the 101 freeway, they made that quick call to the California Highway Patrol, but now that he's back on surface streets in the Woodland Hills area, it's going to be the LAPD in pursuit, and they may be moving in for a pit. Yeah, he was reaching across to fix it. That's why he came to a stop. And I could see him through the front window there. He was trying to reach over. Now, wrong side of the road here. This is on Ventura Boulevard, coming under the freeway here. So Ventura Boulevard, this could be very dangerous considering he's driving on the wrong side of the road there and now trying to maneuver his way back to the right side and maybe entering a shopping center here, perhaps a car wash or a restaurant. Hard to tell. It's a restaurant, rather. So he's going to make his way through the lot, and he's just on the backside of those trees, and he's going to come out here. There's the gas station, and this is going to be Shoup with a cross of Clarendon. We're on the west end of the San Fernando Valley. The LAPD Topanga in pursuit. So right now he's headed west. So we're just south of the 101 freeway. We're roughly in the Woodland Hills area. And you can tell that officer there is trying to move in for the pursuit. And when the driver makes those turns, that's oftentimes a great time to do it because he has to slow down. And this is a pursuit that hasn't been that quick on surface streets, but it was pretty fast when we were on the freeway. I think he was going at times as high as 90 miles an hour. And you can see the officer there trying to move in. He's going to try to go for it here, moving in for that pit, but the driver actually sped up, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for him to perform an effective pit maneuver. And you can see that the driver is trying to avoid him. He knows what the officer is trying to do as he makes his way down here on Ventura Boulevard, trying to avoid that pit from the LAPD. It is unusual, especially at those speeds. He was going about 65 miles an hour, and typically you wouldn't want to perform a pit maneuver if it's anything faster than 35 because it's simply too dangerous. You could cause the car to overturn, and these streets are busy. I mean, you see all of the cars there on the road, a lot of cars off to the side. So I'm actually surprised that the officer was moving in at that point, but it definitely looked like that's what he was trying to do. And now here's a dead end. So let's see what happens here. Perhaps the driver will try to make that U-turn, or he's going to take off running. Nope, I was wrong. He's going to crash right through the fence and try to leave that way. Wow. Del Valle and Gomers Road, the vehicle trying to drive here through the empty lot here. It looks like he's having a tough time, though, as that car is barely making it through. So that's actually going to be Ventura Boulevard. Yeah, so that's Ventura Boulevard. I threw the streets up there for you so you can see. You can see that the officers are already waiting for him there. Additional units coming to the scene. And the driver, as far as I can tell, is still in the car. I have not seen him make any movement to try to get out. You can see that his hazard lights are on, and that vehicle is kind of on a slope there. And at this point, it does not look like he's making any effort to get out of the vehicle. Yeah, there's actually a few RVs there, and I do believe that they belong to some homeless people here in the area, which is actually just adding to the danger level of this all, because you can see the officers there with their guns drawn, trying to use those RVs to block and serve as some sort of protection from this individual. Again, it's unclear to us at this time what that person was wanted for, and of course, if that person was perhaps wanted for any type of assault and not just any type of vehicle violation, they're going to have to be extra careful on this one. Again, we're just off of Ventura Boulevard. Yeah, it actually looks like it's a little bit of a hill, so he's kind of on the slope end of the hill, closer to Ventura Boulevard. And again, this a pursuit that started maybe about 5 minutes before we brought you the first images of this chase, when the officers were actually in the wash trying to catch up with this guy. And when I first heard that he was in the wash, I thought that perhaps he was already out of the vehicle and running. But then I also heard them saying that they were going to try to do a pit, which is what led me to believe that he was still in the car. And still in the car is where he is now, as the officers continue with their guns drawn just behind that RV. So we're just east of Topanga Canyon, just east of Topanga Canyon and the 101 freeway. Ventura Boulevard, of course, the major that runs here through the area. And let me get a feel for the land here. It looks like that is just an empty park there next to some homes, as well as a business. Let me push in, we can see what this is. Oh, it looks like it's a bowling alley. So it's going to be just an empty lot next to a bowling alley, just east of that bowling alley, right off of Ventura Canyon and Ventura Boulevard and Topanga Canyon. I have not seen any movement from that person. However, what we were able to see earlier was that the windows were not tinted. We were able to get a good look at that person inside. In fact, we could even see him reaching over and trying to fix his mirror. So that means that the officers who are standing literally feet away have a full glimpse of what this person is doing. And then, of course, you also have the LAPD chopper overhead, who is also able to look inside and continue to give the officers direction as to what this person is doing. As you said before, the want is assault with a deadly weapon, and oftentimes oftentimes will just be the vehicle. The vehicle itself can be considered a weapon, but there's also always the possibility that that weapon could actually be a physical weapon, such as a knife or a gun. So for that reason, they're going to have to be very careful on this one. It actually does look like it's a sidewalk. Yeah, you can see that there's actually some pedestrians there, perhaps some of the people that live in this homeless encampment as well, just kind of walking around and looking at what is happening here. I can guarantee you they were not expecting a car to come from that direction, because you guys saw it. The guy actually drove through a fence to be able to get onto that property. And unfortunately, because of the type of car that he was in, he really wasn't able to go much further. He got stuck there and is now basically on a slope there. He's, you can see that he's kind of lopsided there with the driver's side closer to us on this side. You can see his hand there, and I think if I go into some of my doublers, you'll be able to take a look at that person. But I can kind of just make out his hand there, and again, believed to be the only person in the vehicle. Absolutely, because there's a chance that that car could keep going. And if it does, it's going to come right in their direction. So for that reason, they're going to have to be ready to run out of the way if needed. But as far as I can tell, if he wanted to move, he probably would have done it already. But he is, you know, he's making that effort by those wheels spinning. It means he's still got some fight left in him. And again, a pursuit that started maybe about 5 minutes before we got overhead, where he actually was even driving through the wash and ended up now in this precarious situation here just off of Ventura Boulevard in Topanga Canyon. You know, I actually haven't heard, Colleen, but it wouldn't be a bad idea for the helicopter to just get on the loudspeaker and tell some of these folks to clear out of the way. But from what I'm seeing here firsthand, it looks like people are just kind of watching from a distance. No one really trying to get involved, fortunately, but there's the possibility that there could be people actually inside of those RVs, which of course makes for a dangerous situation, especially if there's any type of crossfire situation. So as far, we haven't seen anyone come out of those RVs, so it looks like they are in fact staying inside, sheltering in place, and just kind of watching everything unfold before them. This literally just fell right in their lap. Unfortunately, there's some people that live in these RVs out here on Ventura Boulevard, and out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, this car came right in their direction. Absolutely. This is a situation where it's going to be difficult to get units directly behind that vehicle. Sometimes when you have these like standoff situations, you can get a SWAT Bearcat to come to the scene, and you can actually park a Bearcat right in front and behind the vehicle to prevent it from going anywhere further. But unfortunately, because of the location where the vehicle is now, there's really no boxing him in. It's actually going to be a situation where they're just going to have to talk to this person and try to get him to come out peacefully. Or there's also the possibility that they could use the police canine. So that is another option that the officers have on their hand. But what they do also have is time. So they can get more officers out here, they can get canine officers out here, they can get negotiators out to the scene to convince this man to surrender. It very well could be. If they know who this person is, then they would have his phone number and be able to reach out to him that way. And then also, as far as we know, the car was not stolen. So the officers were behind him at a point. They were able to get the plate, and they can run it, get the plate, get the registration information, get the owner information, and try to reach him that way. So this may be a situation where they do have his number and they've already called him, or perhaps he's called them. We see that happen often. Or, of course, he may be speaking to a family member, but unfortunately, it ended up in a place that is very busy, especially at this time of night, people trying to just get home. You can see that traffic is starting to build here on Ventura Boulevard. That's going to be the eastbound lanes. I'll move over just a touch so you can see that that's actually a freeway on-ramp and off-ramp as well. So this is going to have an effect here on the commute as drivers are making their way on Ventura Boulevard. If you usually travel through this area, you're probably better off staying on the freeway this evening. Yeah, I would call it Woodland Hills, Colleen. We're on Ventura Boulevard between Valley Circle and Topanga. So we are just north of the 101 freeway. Valley Circle is on the right side of the screen, and Topanga is on the left. And there's a freeway on-ramp right there. So that's where usually you would have a lot of people heading this way to jump on the freeway right there, but today might not be the best day because you will be at a complete stop with officers completely blocking all lanes of Ventura Boulevard. Yeah, correct. So that first section that we were looking was going to be the eastbound drive, and this is the westbound drive. This is where officers have the street blocked off, and they're forcing everyone to make that turn, and that's a smaller street. I'll see if I can get it for you. So that's Royer Avenue. So everyone who is headed westbound is being forced onto Royer Avenue instead of Ventura Boulevard, rather, yeah. And normally Ventura Boulevard is a great alternate to that 101 freeway, but again, just not today. Yeah, I believe they actually are. I'm going to move over to that cul-de-sac, which is just on the south side of this little hill. So you can see the officers there. So they're still there just in case he takes off running. Then they have officers basically surrounding this entire hillside, and you really want to be able to get anywhere. You see how many officers there are on scene already, and additional officers coming to the scene. As I mentioned before, this is a situation where they'll try to get a police canine out here, and of course not every unit is equipped with a canine officer, so sometimes they have to call that officer from home to come to the scene, and if this does in fact become a SWAT situation, they have to make those calls as well. Oh, yeah. You have some officers who are just walking around closer to the bottom of the frame, but then you see those officers there with their guns still drawn and pointed at this person. Again, as far as we know, this is somebody who is wanted for a deadly weapons charge, which could be the vehicle. Oftentimes we see that in these situations, it is the vehicle, a situation where perhaps the person tried to run somebody over with the car. So we see that time and time again, but there's also the possibility that this could be a person who is armed with a gun or a knife. So for that reason is why we are seeing these officers still with their guns drawn and pointed at that car. Let me push in here a little bit with my doublers, and we can see if he's moved at all. I do see him still just sitting there in the driver's seat, and it looks like he's not moving. I don't believe that he is hurt. Of course, he drove through that lot, but I don't believe that he would have gotten hurt in the process. So at this point, it does appear that he's still just sitting there in the driver's seat and not cooperating with the officers. I believe he could move forward, but it might be quite the fall, because essentially it might be like a 4 or 5 foot drop onto that sidewalk below. So I don't know that the car would be able, especially this type of car, it looks to be an older car. It's already been through the ringer with everything that has happened during the course of this pursuit. So I don't know how well it would fare if it were to fall those additional 5 feet. So at this point, yeah, go ahead, Michael. Yeah, he appears to be stuck by my vantage point, and that wall, or that fence rather, would likely be about 6 feet. So we can estimate that that's probably how far off he is off the ground. So it would be quite the fall if he were to fall onto the sidewalk below. And if he does, there's going to be a team of officers waiting for him, at least a dozen officers waiting for him there on Ventura Boulevard. Yeah, I believe they've made those calls on the scanner already just to have everyone start to head in this direction should it become a standoff situation. But as I mentioned before, what they often will try to do is they'll try to box the car in with the SWAT vehicles, with the Bearcats. But in this case, we can tell that the vehicle is about 6 feet off the ground, so it'd be difficult to box him in, at least from the Ventura Boulevard side, but I'm sure those vehicles could get behind him. But of course, this is a different one. I can't remember a time when we've had a car end up in this type of situation. I have a feeling that if he were to get out of the car, he could walk out onto that lot there, and then of course the officers could direct him perhaps back uphill, because we know that he already cut a hole through the fence up there with the car, so he would be able to go that way if necessary. Yeah, he could also do the passenger side as well. Yeah, that was coming from the officers, I believe. Yeah, I can tell that gentleman there, that officer there, closest to the RV door, he had a flashlight and he was flashing it at the man. Now, I don't know why he did that. I mean, he can obviously see them unless they were perhaps just trying to get his attention. It's really hard to tell. I didn't hear the chatter on the scanner about why the officer was doing that. But again, a situation here still unfolding on Ventura Boulevard between Valley Circle and Topanga Canyon, just north of the 101 freeway. If you normally take Ventura Boulevard, again, you're probably better off staying on the 101 freeway, either north or south, because both directions of Ventura Boulevard are currently blocked. Yeah, that's really on the side of the officers this time, because normally most pursuits that we cover, we can't see inside. But in this case, the vehicle doesn't appear to have any window tint, so they can see inside. And in fact, the driver's side window is down from what I can tell, which further increases the officer's ability to look inside the vehicle. I know that during the pursuit, when we were peeking inside, we could see the gentleman quite well, and we could see him reaching over to try to fix his passenger side mirror that was hanging loose. We don't know how that damage was caused, but at that point, we know he had already gone through the wash. Let me move the shot up there so we can see what's going on up there. As far as I can tell, yeah, it looks like we have a few people walking around, but they all appear to be civilians, perhaps some of the people that live in those RVs. And the officers, I'm not seeing them right next to their vehicle, so they're either inside or they've come down to join their other officers on Ventura Boulevard. But this is a different one. We saw him crash through that fence when he got to that dead-end street, that cul-de-sac there, and we were wondering what he was going to do, if he was going to hang a U-turn or if he was going to give up or just take off running, and instead he crashed right through that fence, drove through this lot. You can see the tire marks there. This is the direction that he took until the car appears to have gotten stuck there, just south of Ventura Boulevard. Yes, that is quite the drop, Michael. So it is a good thing that he did not go this way and instead went towards the east instead, where the drop is about 6 feet, because this drop over here is at least 30 feet, maybe more. Yeah, let me look over here. Yeah, that bus there, I had been watching him for a little bit because he was waiting there, and hopefully he was trying to hopefully be able to proceed, but unfortunately he's not going to. He was one of the cars that was stuck, and everyone's getting turned around. So those were all the cars that were headed eastbound, and now I'll quickly check on the westbound side. We know everyone was getting turned around there onto a smaller street called I believe it's Royer Avenue. Yes, that's Royer Avenue. Everyone's getting turned around there. Some people are actually just making a U-turn on Ventura Boulevard and going back the way they came. So again, this is going to have a major impact on one of the biggest streets here in the San Fernando Valley, Ventura Boulevard. And today, the 101 freeway will be your better option if you plan on traveling anywhere between Topanga Canyon and Valley Circle. We know that oftentimes officers will point their light at the vehicle to try to basically create a veil. And so if you think about it, if you've ever gotten pulled over, you'll often see that the officer who gets behind you will have his lights on super bright, so that if you look actually in your rearview mirror, you can't really see him approaching. So it kind of gives the officers a little bit extra protection so that the person inside the car can't really see the officer's movements, and it gives them a slight advantage. So it very well could be a situation where they're using the light to create at least some sort of protection between them and the person inside. Yeah, usually once the pursuit comes to a stop, or the vehicle comes to a stop rather, and the person doesn't immediately come out, oftentimes it means that this will be a standoff situation. So for that reason, that's why they started making those calls to the Metro Division, which is the SWAT division of the LAPD, as well as the police canine, to get every option possible out here, should it be necessary. Of course, they'll also get their crisis negotiators out here, because perhaps that person would be able to use keywords and communicate with the individual inside in a way that would allow him to surrender. But at this point, the person inside has not moved. We do believe that it is a man from what we were able to gather, and we also believe that he is the only person inside. And you're right, Michael. I'm using my doublers now, and that's why the image is a little bit blurry, but it does allow us to see the windows a little bit better. And before, the driver did have his window all the way down, and now it's about 3/4 of the way up. But if you look at the back window, it's also about 3/4 of the way up. You see that light there again from the LAPD. So this is a person who's still conscious. I was worried there for a second that maybe he wasn't conscious anymore, and that's why they were trying to get his attention. But it looks like if he's able to roll the windows up and down, he's still fully alert and just choosing not to cooperate with officers. Let's see, I'm gonna push in again so we can take a better look. It's hard to tell from my vantage point. I have a very small monitor, so as far as I can tell, the brighter light that we were seeing was coming from the LAPD officer on Ventura Boulevard, but then there's also the night sun from the helicopter overhead, so perhaps that's one of the lights that we're seeing at this police termination. But you know, you mentioned before, Colleen, that the number of officers appears to be decreasing, and I have to agree with that because it looks like a lot of the officers that actually had their guns pointed at this individual have now retreated. We had seen all those officers standing there before, right in front of the RV, and now we're down to just about 2 or 3 officers behind each unit. So this does look like a situation where at least some of the officers are starting to leave the scene. Canine officers, I believe they may be able to get from the valley, but usually the SWAT team comes from downtown. So at this time of the evening, it's rush hour. It could take a little bit, at least 30 minutes, maybe more based off of traffic. So this is a situation, as you said, Colleen, we could be here for a while. The officers could be here for a while watching this individual in the vehicle. Hopefully he gives up before then, and that way the SWAT team is not needed. However, at this point, we have seen no effort on his part whatsoever to get out of the car. Exactly. As far as we know, the car was not stolen, and as long as it had plates, they should have been able to run those plates and get the registration information. Now, the registration information doesn't necessarily mean that that's the person who was behind the wheel, but it'll get the officers pretty close. They'll be able to reach out to the registered owner, and of course, they would be able to get a home address with that information. They could go there and talk to the people there and ask them, hey, who was driving the car today? And then from that, deduct who is behind the wheel. But of course, there could be a situation where the car is registered to this man, and they know exactly who is behind the wheel, and they, at that point, can try to get in contact with him via cell phone, or even get in contact with a family member, and perhaps the family member would have better luck convincing this person to surrender. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone come out of these vehicles, which leads me to believe that the people inside are hunkered down, which is exactly what they should be doing in order to make sure that they stay safe in this situation. Okay. Okay. Carolyn, we're on Ventura Boulevard and Royer Street. The major streets are going to be Topanga Canyon and Valley Circle to our east. This was a pursuit that started at least 30 minutes ago at this point. We were the first news helicopter overhead, coming overhead about 5 minutes after the pursuit began. And when we came overhead, officers were still trying to locate the vehicle because they knew that he had gone into the wash here on the west end of the San Fernando Valley. The airship had eyes on him, and eventually was able to guide those officers to the vehicle, and the pursuit was on from the ground and the air. The vehicle in question here is a sedan, an older model sedan. It's black and blue and in color with one person behind the wheel. We believe that it's just one person in the car total, a man from what we can gather. And this is a person who is wanted for assault with a deadly weapon. Now, oftentimes that deadly weapon will be the vehicle itself, but sometimes it could be something else like a gun. And the situation continues to unfold here in Woodland Hills. That's latest.